Hello, and welcome to the Rankin Report for Sunday, April the 13th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. We're continuing a study that I began last week. This is part 2 today. I call this Spirits in Motion. And the text has come from the book of 1 Samuel. The overall reading is from chapters 16 through 18, but I'll let you read 16 through 18 on your own because we just don't have the bandwidth for it here. But our key verse today is from 1 Samuel 18, verse 30, the last verse of the chapter. The Philistine commanders continued to go out to battle, and as often as they did, David met with more success than the rest of Saul's officers, and his name became well known. Now, in our last message, part 1, we looked at the history of ancient Israel in the events leading up, or rather proceeding, I should say, from the anointing of David by the prophet Samuel to be Israel's next king after Saul, from whom the Spirit of the Lord had departed due to Saul's disobedience, to David's battle with the Philistine champion Goliath. We saw that once the Lord's Spirit had left Saul, the way was open for an evil spirit or spirits to take advantage of the spiritual vacuum in Saul. Jealousy, then obsession, and murderous intent would culminate in Saul's destruction, coming right in where the vacuum was. In addition, we learned that David's battle with Goliath came after a 40-day period in which the Philistine taunted Saul and the Israelite army for 40 days, which some Bible scholars point to as a sign of trial or probation. God tested Israel and then her king to see what both would do. This also opened the way for God's signs and wonders through David to be known throughout Israel. We further found a parallel to the United States in that the last great move of God in America, the Jesus movement of the 1960s and 70s, had all but completely subsided by the late 1980s. And since nature still abhors a vacuum, other things started to move into place, spiritually speaking, which we will pick up on today. The period of time since the end of the Jesus movement and today is nearly 40 years. Not quite 40, but we're almost there. In the scriptures, the 40-day period of trial for Saul and Israel came with David's defeat of Goliath, which turned the tide in the war between Israel and Philistia. I should say the 40-day period of trial for Saul and Israel came to an end with David's defeat of Goliath. With David's installation to the throne by God, the Philistines would become subject to Israel for the entire term of David and his son Solomon. There is another parallel 480 years prior to that, in that the Israelites, newly freed from Egyptian bondage, wandered in the wilderness for 40 years before entering the land promised by God to the descendants of Abraham. From the end of the Jesus movement to today, it cannot be denied that America has undergone a series of trials that has brought her into a period of decline. It is not a steep decline, not yet, but America has been at a crossroads for years with her future uncertain. For the benefit of those young people who fancy that 40 years ago is ancient history, let's take a moment to review some of the trends that have emerged in the period we have just endured. In the 1980s, one of that period's major trends was the rise of materialism in the form of what was then called yuppieism, the term yuppie being an acronym for young, upwardly mobile professionals. Conspicuous consumption, a kind of rejection of the hippie counterculture of the 60s and 70s, was a sign of the times, vying for the best of everything. The other major item was the rise of the HIV virus, the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, which was first blamed on homosexuality, at least until it started to spread to heterosexuals. Accompanying this were an increase in tensions caused by the arms race of the Cold War, with the early 1980s seeing a kind of close call to thermonuclear war with the Soviet Union, emerging not seen since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. Those of you who lived through that may recall a number of television productions about what would happen in the case of a full-scale exchange. Um, the day after in the United States, threads in Great Britain, and a number of plays on radio and in short films that dealt with the same topic. You still see these things today in the form of fake news bulletin reports about some incident starting somewhere between Russian and American troops, leading all up to a full-scale exchange, and usually ending, spoiler alert, with the nuclear warning broadcasts being sent out among the television. The bottom line of all these things appears to be an emphasis on self as the primary motivating factor in life. What could be done for me while I'm here in this life, with the gospel's call to a life devoted to Jesus and to others being diminished in people's hearing? In the 1990s, this trend continued as alternative philosophies arose. In music, grunge and hip hop were the new sounds, and with video games increasingly violent, safe sex education so you could keep sleeping with whoever you wish to with less risk of AIDS, and an emphasis on angels accompanying it. Remember the books on angels that were published during that time? This trend encouraged the worship of angels rather than the God who made them. All of these and others were the entry points for anti-biblical ideas and increased demonic activity. The 2000s saw these trends increase in music, movies, and fashion, becoming more hardcore. Celebrity culture and social media had their beginnings as the internet grew among everyday people. Cohabitation and homosexuality were becoming increasingly accepted, and high-tech devices, computers like what I'm recording this on, and cell phones grew in sophistication and as worldly diversions offered as an opposition to spiritual matters, and they grew. Those diversions spread in the 2020s, or the 2010s, pardon me, as social media and smartphones increased in popularity. With that came the phenomenon of data collection through social media, mostly by companies looking to target advertising to people utilizing social media, but which can also be used for illegal purposes, identity theft, hacking into bank accounts, etc. Eventually, this is a loss of privacy unless you have the courage to disconnect completely from electronic devices as much as possible, which gets harder to do as the time goes by. Activist movements such as Occupy Wall Street, the Arab Spring, and Black Lives Matter, many of these advocating socialist philosophies, also grew during this decade. A growing lack of national identity, fueled by worldly diversions, led to growing political polarization, which brings us to the present decade, the 2020s, which we are about halfway through. We could call the present trend one of radical inclusivity, where basic inclusiveness, socially speaking, means do not exclude types of people normally not taken into account beyond what is normally expected. Basic inclusiveness. This is one, however, radical inclusivity is one where these groups normally expected or thought of must conform to those not normally so, regardless of religious, political, or even personal beliefs. Such conformity is enforced by law with consequences for violations. Individuality is raised almost to the level of worship, often fueled by growth in online communities. This is about also the time of pandemics. Whether you believe they are natural or, shall we say, engineered, along with their effects, increases in domestic violence and economic recession accompanied the spread of COVID. Also on the horizon is the rise of artificial intelligence, opening a Pandora's box of unknowns for society. This has what has taken place over the last 40 years. But, like the time ancient Israel spent in the wilderness, there is good news. The Great Awakening has begun. The revival that started at Asbury University in Kentucky among the college students is spreading to other colleges and continues today. For all the targeting of our youth by Satan, it is among the youth that the Lord is moving. Why do you think leftists conform or lose your kids laws, such as those proposed in Colorado, are attacking parental rights? I will include a link to Pastor Dutch Sheets's, Dutch Sheets's Give Him 15 post from last week about the awakening. In addition, last week, Prophet Amanda Grace, Ark of Grace Ministries, spoke a word from the Lord that the chains of 40 years ago are weakening. And Pastor Mario Murillo has been sponsoring tent revivals, tent crusades that attract thousands. So much so that he has recently expanded the size of his tent to 60,000 square feet in order to hold the crowds. He has crusades coming up in May in Tyler, Texas, and in November in Conroe, Texas, which is a kind of suburb north of Houston, for those of you who live in those areas. The Lord has heard, and He is moving. The promise is being fulfilled. It will not be easy, because as Satan's kingdom comes under attack, he will be more active in order to try and thwart what God is doing. But he will not succeed if we continue to pray for the awakening, to spread among young and old alike. Like David, in the verse from 1 Samuel 18, God will be with the men he has raised up for this time, and the women he has raised up for this time. The words of his prophets will not fall to the ground, and America, and by extension the world, will be saved. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be merely a spectator to this. But I want to be found doing the Lord's work. Now more than ever is the time for believers to ask, Lord, what would you have me do? It is happening. It is moving. Pray for the Great Awakening. No king but Jesus. Independence forever. That's the Rankin Report for Sunday, April 13th, 2025. Don't forget to hit the like or share buttons or both. Continue to pray for people in California, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Florida who have been ravaged by floods and storms and fires. Don't forget to hit the like or share buttons. Don't forget to hit the subscribe buttons if you like to see more of these videos. And please feel free to share these with anybody you think would benefit from them. Thank you for watching. God bless you. And have a great day.